What the Speak? Episode 7. What will people think when they hear that I must speak a freak?
Do you kick ass when you speak, present, or pitch? If not, these expert discussions and insider tips can help you right now, today. Welcome to the What the Speak podcast. I'm your host, Brian Kelly.
If you've never seen the story behind how and why the What the Speak podcast got started, visit whatthespeak.com/speakbetter to watch the 90-second video. If you like what you see, send the link to someone you know. My guest is Chris Westfall, the National Elevator Pitch Champion and author of The New Elevator Pitch. He's appeared on CNN, ABC, and NBC, and has coached companies on Shark Tank and Dragon's Den. His unique perspective on the elevator pitch is something I had to talk to him about and to take a peek behind what exactly this whole new elevator pitch is and what it takes to become the National Elevator Pitch Champion. Chris, thanks so much for being here today. You know, I'm really excited to have you here because it's not every day that I get to speak to the National Elevator Pitch Champion.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm honored. Thank you.
Excellent. So obviously you became the National Elevator Pitch Champion in 2011 by submitting a video titled, What They Don't Teach You in Business School. I'd like to discuss that in detail, but before we talk about that, can you tell us what exactly is the new elevator pitch?
That's a great question. You know, when you meet somebody for the first time and they come up and they say, so tell me a little bit about yourself, or what do you do? Well, the answer to that question is a classic elevator pitch. It's a short, persuasive speech that introduces a person or a product or an idea. And over the years, it's come to be kind of a staple in business to introduce yourself. But the new elevator pitch, which is the topic of my book, is really about creating a conversation that isn't salesy, that isn't about, delivering yesterday's news, but about creating influence and persuasion. And it's a message that fits, Brian, whether you tweet it or tell it. So the new elevator pitch is designed for the way that we communicate today because, quite frankly, the elevator platform, it's been replaced with the social platform. Exactly. So, you know what I mean? So it's a strategy that works electronically or face-to-face to make your message matter.
Well, I've either read or heard you say somewhere that it boils down to this, creating a connection that leads to a conversation where the listener says, tell me more. Can you give us a little insight into how do you go about, putting together this conversation, this 2-minute or less pitch, so to speak, where people are really intrigued and they want you to tell them more?
Well, the book that I've written, The New Elevator Pitch, steps you through it in a 7-step process to help you to create this message. But if you want your listener to say, tell me more, you have to start your elevator pitch off with the right focus. You've got to turn the mirror around and focus on your listener. And this is something that's counterintuitive for people because when someone says, tell me a little bit about yourself, they think, oh, that's really about me.
Right.
But really what people, if you think about it, what people are really asking you is, tell me a little bit about what you might be able to do for me. So when you want to create that connection, you have to start with what your listener is thinking. And it's human nature that everyone's thinking about themselves. So instead of starting off with your name, rank, and serial number, hi, my name's Tim Smith. I'm an accountant. Why not make a connection with your listener and start with what's on their mind? Now, then when I say that, people are probably thinking, well, so Chris, is the new elevator pitch about how to read minds? Well, in a way, it is. Yeah. But it's really about understanding human nature, really, is what it is, to create that connection that we all want.
No, that makes total sense. And I think it's good because it is taking the focus away from, what do I have to offer versus what do you need and how might I possibly be able to help you?
That's right. Because an elevator pitch isn't just about transferring information. It's not about just regurgitating facts and figures. If that's what your elevator pitch is about, just hand somebody a copy of your resume or send them to your website. But if you want to inspire action, you see, that's the thing. The best elevator pitch, it's not judged by what you say. It's judged by what your listener does when you're done.
Yeah.
So you've got to think about that action that you want to inspire. Because if you want to persuade and influence in some way, your message is about change, right? And change for the other person. So that's really what the focus is.
Excellent. Well, in just a minute, I'm going to turn the tables on you, and we're going to see how you've actually crafted the elevator pitch that won you this title of National Elevator Pitch Champion. But I did also want to touch upon three important things that I found through your work that I thought was important to mention. The first is, it really, I think you've described these as the three secrets to a great elevator pitch. The first is that you need authentic conviction. The second is that you must convey your value. And then the third is that you must focus on the future. Can you talk about each of those three aspects, these three secrets?
Well, let me start with the last and work backwards. And say that again for me. The last one was
focus on the future.
Focus on the future. When you meet somebody for the first time and they say, "So tell me a little bit about yourself," it's very easy to fall into a trap where you start talking about the past, right? Because the past is certain. Yet, when you want to persuade, the past isn't as important as the potential. The past only serves to support what you might be able to do with, through, and for your listener, which is the most important place to focus. So that is really the place where you find that most powerful connection is on the potential, not the past. Now help me, the second one was?
Convey your value.
That's really about what's special about you. In other words, if you are a financial advisor, that's great. So are thousands of other people, and not to diminish what you've done or what you can offer, but you really haven't, you've just been descriptive. You haven't been inspirational. If you want to relay information, that's not the new elevator pitch. If you want to inspire action, that's the new elevator pitch. That creates that tell me more. And the only place that comes from, Brian, it's got to come from a place of authentic conviction. It's got to be sincere. I mean, if you think you're gonna pitch somebody or you're gonna speechify someone, I mean, people are like, "Whoa, no, stop!" Nobody wants to be pitched, but everybody wants to have a conversation. And if you really want to persuade and influence, you've got to understand how to do that in a conversation that's authentic. I mean, if it feels like you're pitching, if it feels pitchy or feels like you've got to be someone else to make your message matter, you're doing it wrong. It's got to be real. It's got to be real for you if it's going to be real for your listener.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's powerful, especially in today with all the dramatic changes that have happened through social communication, and folks building their own platforms through blogs and various social channels, etc. And it's no longer about being that swarmy salesperson, so to speak. It's about making a real connection with somebody, being yourself, and seeing what can you do for someone else that ultimately gives them value.
You're so right. And for folks that are watching this, that are out there and they're active in social media, maybe they're bloggers, maybe they're, for whatever reason, they're using that tool and trying to be more effective with it. To the extent you're able to put your attention on your audience, that's the first step to changing the message. Turn the mirror around and focus on creating real value for your listener. And that value has to be something that's surprising, that's unexpected, even counterintuitive or innovative. It's got to be something that we haven't heard before, because otherwise you're not talking about what's different about you, and you don't get to tell me more. You get a so what.
Yep, exactly.
So,
all right, Chris. Well, let's break this down a little bit further. So we're going to use you as a case study. And in the show notes for this interview, we're going to go ahead and link to the video, What They Don't Teach You in Business School. So folks will be able to have a chance to look at that. But this is essentially the video that you submitted that won you this designation of National Elevator Pitch Champion. Before we talk about the different aspects of what you walk through in the video, can you share a little bit about exactly like what was this contest, who put it on, just a little bit of backstory on that?
Sure, Brian. It all started with a tweet. I saw a tweet come across my stream, okay? And I saw that a guy by the name of Jeffrey Hazlett was putting together a contest, and he wanted to find the best elevator pitch in the country. Now, Jeffrey Hazlett is the former chief marketing officer at Kodak. He's the guy that Forbes magazine called the celebrity CMO. He's an internationally recognized expert on branding and marketing. He's written a couple of best-selling books. One is called The Mirror Test, and another one that came out in 2012 called Running the Gauntlet. Anyway, I had the chance to meet Jeffrey Hazlett and heard him speak. And so I knew Jeff, and I knew a little bit about his message, and I had read the Mirror Test, and I really enjoyed it. So when I saw this tweet that he was looking for someone, I said, well, I'll throw my hat into the ring. I didn't know what would come of it or what to expect, but I did. I put together the video that you've referenced, sent it in, and launched a nationwide social media campaign. And I had to get votes from all over the country. And I actually came in second place in the voting. But Jeff had put together a team of judges, including Mari Smith and some other people who I really respect in the social media space. And they looked at the videos and they said, you know what? Second place in the voting, but first place with us. This guy's the grand prize winner, national champion. And that was where it started. And that was kind of an event that, changed the game for me. It changed the conversation, so to speak. And helped me to launch the book, and now has allowed me to just do some phenomenal things to help get my message out and make a difference for people. I mean, I've got coaching clients right now on 4 continents.
Wow.
But it doesn't mean I live on airplanes. Thank God for Skype, right? Yeah. I'm able to work with Fortune 100 companies, high growth businesses, entrepreneurs, and one of the things that I was very proud of this past spring is that I helped a company on Dragon's Den, which is the Canadian version of Shark Tank. Yeah. So one of my clients hired me to help them to get their pitch down so that they could get in front of the dragons and do their thing. And they actually taped an episode in Toronto, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it. So anyway, that's been the story of how it's changed. And it's what it really illustrated for me is when you change your story, you can change your results. And that doesn't mean, creative fiction or, when I had a pet unicorn or something like that. Right. It's just the way that you approach your story. It can teach people how to treat you, how to pay you, how to hire you, how to give you a national award, in fact.
Yeah.
So that's really my platform and my message. I'm very passionate about it, and I'm glad to see that it's making a difference for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about your story and how you used it in this particular pitch. So I kind of outlined some different aspects of this, which we shared before we started recording this interview, and I'll kind of walk through and have you talk about each of these components. So when you started the video, the first thing right off the bat is you get right into making a statement about when you were in school. So can you tell us a little bit about how you started it and why you chose this particular phrasing right off the bat?
One of the things that Jeffrey Hazlett says in the Mirror Test is that you've only got 8 seconds to grab someone's attention. And that's true. The average attention span of an adult is 8 seconds.
Yep.
And that's a scientific fact. And, if you think about it, we got millions of messages that are bombarding us every day. So if you want to connect with somebody, you've got to say something right off the bat that's somewhat universal. That everyone, whether they're in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, or Seattle, Washington, they can sit there and go, you know what, I can relate to that.
Yep.
I can relate to that on some level. And everyone's been in school. Even if you didn't go to college, you've been in school. You've been sitting in a classroom where you're thinking, what's the value of this? What is really the value of whether it's algebra or advanced calculus or whatever class it is that makes your eyes glaze over? You're going, what's the value? And my elevator pitch was really about the value of education, being able to prove that, because in the current economy, the letters after your name, if you think the college you went to is enough of a stamp of approval to get you where you need to go, you're making a mistake.
Yeah.
And that's really so I wanted to set the stage with a common frame of reference. And that's, if folks are watching this and thinking, gosh, can I get some advice and stuff like that? Start your elevator pitch with a common frame of reference to make sure your listener nod their head and go, yeah, I do know what you're talking about. It keeps you from going too deep too soon, especially if you've got like something that's very technical that you want to talk about. You've got to find common ground before you get to uncommon results, and before you earn the right to talk techie or go deep into your legal briefs or your past history or your experience or whatever. You got to create that common connection. That's what I was trying to do initially.
Yeah, I think it works very effectively, and it's something that kind of pulls you in right off the bat. So the next component you have is talking about who you are and what you do, but you do this in a way that's very to the point. You do this in a way that's very clear. So can you talk about how you crafted that particular piece to set up? If I've never seen you before, I've never heard anything about Chris Westfall, I'm going to be able to understand it right here pretty quickly before you dive into the rest of your pitch.
The best conversation is the one that is the clearest. In other words, where you get to the point very quickly. But the question is, what's the point? Where should I focus? Where should I put my attention? And what demands your focus is what's different about you, what's unexpected about you. I mean, when you're meeting someone for the first time, if you are offering up cliches or things that people have heard before, they've heard it all before. Why would they lean in? Why would they say, tell me more? So in a context of a universal theme that we can all understand, you remember back when you were in school. I'll never forget when I was in school. Yeah, we've all been in school. Everybody's got that. Well, the most important thing that I learned was what they don't teach you in business school. So that's an unexpected, if you will, it's an unexpected twist without being gimmicky. I mean, it's not like, guess what I learned? How much would you expect to pay for an education like that? No, it's just very natural and quite frankly, very sincere. Very sincere, because I honestly believe that the greatest lessons came outside the classroom, came from what they didn't teach me in business school. Mm-hmm. Because the value of education, it's not really shown on your report card. It's shown in action. I mean, if you want to know what your degree is worth, and I say this in the video, if you want to know what your degree is worth, put it to work, put it into action. So that's the key theme. And I think for people that are interested in how can I create that compelling connection right away, focus your attention on what you believe in your heart, and then concentrate on action. What's that change that you want to create? Because it's human beings are built to crave consistency, but recognize change. We may run screaming from change, but we recognize it. Yep. And when you present that change and something that's different and unexpected, that's what makes people lean in. If you're authentic and sincere about it.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
That's what I was going for in the video.
Great. So the next component that you move into, you're talking about really setting the stage of the challenges that students face in the current economic climate. Mm-hmm. And that kind of sets up the next piece, which we'll get to in just a minute. But talk about why you chose illustrating some challenges, the difficult things that are out there that you're essentially working to solve.
First of all, because I believe sincerely that those challenges are out there, that for folks looking for jobs today, internships, that there are a lot of challenges for the millennial generation. And I feel passionate about that. I'm very committed to helping Gen Y. And so that was, again, it comes from a very sincere place. But you've got to, if your message is about change in some way, if you think about it, change is about something, that starts here and it ends, there's movement. Yeah. So you have to say, here's what's really going on. And I tried to use humor. If you look at the video and stuff and I say, it's the worst economy since Lincoln grew a beard, I'm trying to be funny, but hopefully that's memorable. You haven't thought of it in that way. Yeah. Nobody thinks of Abe Lincoln without a beard. Anyway, but so that's kind of the state of the union, if you will. Mm-hmm. Now, what are we going to do about it? What am I going to do with, through, and for others to make an impact? Because that's really what people are asking when they say, so tell me a little bit about yourself. What they're really saying is, tell me a little bit about what you might be able to do for me.
Yep.
So here's the State of the Union. Here's where we can go through this change. And at the centerpiece of every persuasive conversation is change. So for folks that are watching this, and if you're trying to think, how can I get a good elevator pitch? Start off with the change that you'd like to create. Ask yourself, what's the change that you'd like to create? For me, for my elevator pitch that we're referencing today, it was I want to help give Gen Y every possible opportunity to fulfill on the promise of that generation. Yep. That may feel a little bit grand, but that was what I was going for. And I think it all happens through your story. If again, it's all about the way that you communicate what you've done. Experience doesn't really matter, but the way you connect it to your listener is everything.
Absolutely.
That's the relevance, yeah.
Yeah. So then that kind of segues into the next piece where, we're working towards the end of this, was it like a minute and a half pitch, really? So you explain a little bit further how you specifically help students and ultimately schools where these students attend address the issues, the challenges. So why is this important? I mean, it's kind of obvious, but I'd love to hear you talk about it.
Oh, it's a great question. The idea is you probably want to know what I've done with others, and certainly I want to share that with you, because the implication is, I've done this for others. I believe I might be able to do the same for you.
Yeah.
And that's a very powerful thing. And the words that I choose are very careful, and I want to point them out. I believe I might be able to do the same for you. It's different than, I've helped other companies, and by God, I can help you too. That's called being oversold. That's called too much. That's not a conversation. That's called being pushy.
Right.
So when you say, this is what I've done for others, you're probably curious to know. But if you're only talking about what you've done for others, that's like over here. You got to bring that to your listener. I've accomplished some things for others over here. Here's what we might be able to do together. People are more interested in potential than in the past, and they want to know. Tell a story about right now. I mean, it doesn't matter if you've been in business for 52 years. It doesn't matter. What are we doing right now, and what are we going to do together? So that was kind of where I was headed towards that outcome, and that, because the past is certain, it's easier to talk about, right? The future's unknown for both of us.
Yep.
But if we work together, we might, I believe, be able to create some outcomes for you that could be pretty compelling.
Well, the thing I think that's interesting too is you're kind of setting up, again, the challenges, and then you're talking about, here's, relevant current things that I'm doing because I'm passionate about it, and you're resolving that tension. So you've set up, here's the problem, and then you're kind of talking about, here's the solution, or here's what things could look like if I were to work with you or your organization.
Absolutely right. That's the key. It's saying, picture this. And by the way, we're all visual creatures. So, and that's why I love video, and I'm so glad to be doing this. But it's painting a picture, and it says, picture this, brave new world, something better. And now guess what? Put yourself in the picture. Let's make it a self-portrait of a future that we both want. Tell me more.
Yeah, beautiful.
So that's how it works.
All right. So the last piece, the last component of your video, which I think is really important, that unless you work in marketing or have a background in marketing, you may not think about it at all, but it's very essential, and that's the call to action. So you end your video with a specific message. Again, video is a little bit different than if you were speaking face to face with somebody you knew a little bit of background on who they are, what they do, etc.
Yep.
This is meant to be a little bit more general, but talk about that call to action at the end.
If your aim is to influence and persuade, and I would argue that everybody watching this video wants to influence and persuade, even if it's just that they know a great place for sushi and we can go there next Thursday. I mean, everybody wants to influence and persuade. You want to create yes in some form or fashion, right? You want to create agreement, or at least even if the conversation continues, that's agreement in some way to tell me more.
Yeah.
So the way to close the conversation is with that call to action. But in the modern context, in the context of the new elevator pitch, the call to action is really an invitation. It's an invitation, because an invitation is the easiest thing to say yes to.
Yeah.
So, and so many of my clients, they'll deliver a great pitch, and I say, you got me lathered up. Where's the invitation? What are we going to do?
Yeah.
What are we going to do? We got it. There's so much love in the room. What are we going to do? We're going to lock arms and sing Kumbaya, or are we going to do something together? So it's really important to provide that invitation, and sometimes it can be as simple as that, to invite someone to take the next step. And sometimes that next step can be passive, like us on Facebook, but I advocate something that's logical, that continues, that asks the listener for some sort of action on their part, to take a meeting, even if it's just to have a cup of coffee, or to meet face to face, or to take a Skype call, so that there's a participation element, and participation is a big part of engagement. That's how you know if you've really created a conversation for the person.
Exactly, and I think it's important to reiterate that, again, this is the new elevator pitch that we're talking about. This isn't kind of the old traditional model where at the end of that 90-second conversation, you're asking for a $10,000 order or whatever. It's you want to have that call to action. You want it to be something that they're going to do after this conversation, and it could be as simple as, here's my business card, or here, let's meet for coffee, like you said, something very small.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and make it easy. I mean, and sometimes there's a time when you go, you know what? I think it's time for you to place the $10,000 order. I mean, and if you've gotten to that place, that's great. I mean, It's just, You just have to be at the right place to, ask the right question at the right time. It's like, if you ask, if you ask someone, will you marry me, at the right time, you get a great answer. But if it's too soon, guess what?
Yeah.
It isn't going to go your way.
Absolutely.
So anyway.
Great. Well, Chris, thanks so much for sharing these insights. I think it was really good to have you not only talk about what the new elevator pitch is all about, but to actually, have you talk about how you specifically used it in this particular context, versus you just kind of spouting off, here's what you think you should do. It's actually, you've done it yourself, and I'm sure you continue to do it in every situation that you find yourself in.
Well, I think visual learning is so important, and I really have an affinity for video. I'm a visual learner, so I like to see it done. And one of the things that I put in my book is a series of links, QR codes, as well as short links to videos, so people can see the concepts illustrated on my YouTube channel. And if, just in case people are curious, that's youtube.com/Westfall Online. Westfall Online is my YouTube channel. I've got over 100 videos. I'm headed towards 750,000 page views right now as we record this. Who knows what that number will be in the future, and I hope it continues to grow. But would love to invite the listeners to check out the videos there. If you're curious to know how to put these ideas on their feet and really put them into action, it could make a difference. So
great. Well, Chris, I'm a big fan of your work, and thanks so much again for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Today's guest certainly had some amazing insights they shared. If you'd like to purchase a copy of their latest book, visit this episode's show notes over at whatthespeak.com and click the link at the bottom of the page to immediately order their book.
All right, here we go with the outro.
Thanks so much for joining us today on What the Speak. Be sure to visit whatthespeak.com for show notes on every episode and to sign up for our email list to stay updated on resources that'll help you kick ass when you speak, present, or pitch.